trigger happy and I give less than a fuck. Love me or hate me, I'ma show enough, rip shit up. It's Mr. Nothing, nice on a mic stand. Mic in the left and the zest in my right hand. I took a puff, had enough now, hold up. If that was Indo, niggas getting rolled up.
What's going on, folks? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to review Tay Dizm's breakout mixtape, or 2009 mixtape, Dreamgirl. So this basically has a number of musicians on here. Akon is on here, T-Pain is on here, which basically Tay Dizm is T-Pain's hype man, which is kind of like, if you pay attention to like Public Enemy, how the main vocalist Chuck D had Flavor Flav as like a hype man. T-Pain himself, who was basically Akon's hype man, has a hype man of his own. And he basically was on the verge, Tay Dizm was on the verge of putting out a new project. He was going to put out an album. Tay Dizm was going to put out an album around the same time that T-Pain put out his 2008 Three Rings project. But the problem with it is the fact that it just didn't see enough success in the singles that Tay Dizm dropped, so he never got the album. But luckily, the 3 singles that Tay Dizm dropped that he was trying to use for the album wind up on this mixtape, which is pretty kick-ass, because I would have said the album probably would have been pretty balanced had we gotten it, but the mixtape stands on its own as pretty good. Just keep in mind that it's really low-key. There's not a ton of attention that Tay Dizm really gets. I mean, I feel like T-Pain was somewhat low-key. I mean, T-Pain was pretty widespread back in 2007, 8, and 9, but basically after like the Three Rings album, T-Pain kind of disappeared a bit and kind of sabotaged like the rest of his success. But he was on the verge of having like a web of people that were getting ready to put out a project, one of which was Tay Dizm. He's on T-Pain's Nappy Boy Entertainment label, which was basically on Akon's Convict Music label, and Akon even shows up on here once. I mean, obviously he's kind of like what Dr. Dre was to 50 Cent, you know, where Eminem would kind of work with 50 Cent more than Dr. Dre worked with Eminem. That's kind of how Akon treats like Tay Dizm, but he does deliver a pretty rock solid hook on the album, the mixtape's title track, Dreamgirl. That's kind of the concept. So basically you're just getting a free assortment of kind of T-Pain affiliated music, which works pretty well for what it does. It's original music. There's no freestyles over instrumentals or things like that. And I really kind of feel like it's, like I said, it's a rock solid project that showcases that Tay Dizm is an adequate hype man for T-Pain. The only real weakness I feel like Tay Dizm kind of has in this department, he does have a number of songs for the ladies on here and does, you know, a mixed bag of results in terms of how well he does, but he does not have the most melodic and distinct voice in terms of something that's kind of soothing in a sense of portraying some of these R&B songs. But for the most part, he still delivers some pretty solid music, and that's kind of the situation. So I'll go ahead and talk about the 3 singles. So the first single was Beam Me Up with T-Pain and Rick Ross. This came out in 2008 and was originally intended for the album. Basically, this is pretty futuristic. I really like the concept of it. Yeah, it sounds like a typical club type song from 2007, 2008, kind of similar to like the stuff that like Dalla and T-Pain were doing back around that time. If you've heard 2008 songs like Usher's Lovin' This Club and that type stuff, you've definitely heard club songs in this department. I feel like it's pretty solid. T-Pain, like I was trying to say, like in an earlier take of this review, I was trying to say that T-Pain gives some pretty decent hooks, but he does not really use the vocoder, which is basically the auto-tune type voice. So he kind of just gives like some, I don't want to say hodgepodge, but just kind of sleepwalking kind of choruses for like the stuff that he affiliates with Tay Dizm, where it's good, but it's not quite as viciously addictive as the stuff for T-Pain's albums and the stuff with the vocoder, but they're still decent in what they are for free music. It's definitely solid to kind of get some of these and have like a relative appreciation of it. But that's what happens with Beam Me Up. I think it was, I mean, this was originally intended for the album, so it's surprising that T-Pain didn't put more effort into the hook, but it's serviceable. I would probably rank it just like B-list in terms of its effectiveness, and Rick Ross kind of comes through and he kind of sleepwalks through his verse as well. Not quite as solid as the stuff he was doing with Trilla around that time in 2008. It's just kind of, I mean, I feel like it's a serviceable song, but it's not quite as like crunchy as like the stuff that T-Pain was doing in 2008. I definitely feel like it could have been more fiery, and it probably would have been just another Billboard hit for all three of them, probably. But it's good. I definitely feel like it's good, and it's definitely good for free music. Um, the next single had Akon on there and was Dream Girl. This is probably the best song on the album. It makes sense that the mixtape was named after this song. Akon completely, he does not shortchange the song. I mean, T-Pain kind of like narrows down or dwindles like his effectiveness. It's not like he was doing it on purpose, but just because it's free, you know. But they're not as T-Pain is not quite as hooky as he is on his albums, but Akon completely, like when I say sleepwalks, it's just so effortless the way Akon kind of knocks this hook out of the park. It's just great. And this is another kind of 2008, 2009 club song type sounding thing. Tay Dizm handles it real well, and it just feels like any other Akon song around that time. The stuff he was doing with Lady Gaga, and the stuff he was doing with Colby O'Donis, the stuff he was doing with T-Pain, Pitbull, David Guetta, all those different folks. It's just another interchangeable Akon hook that works well, but it's just good. And the fact that it's free, there's no real reason why you shouldn't be listening to this song. Akon just really delivers. And the third single was Nothing But the Truth. Nothing But the Truth is another club type beat that kind of has a quicker tempo. It kind of reminds me of something that like Enrique Iglesias would do, or like Pitbull back in those days, or Flo Rida, or some folks like that. It just really feels like a 2000s kind of club bop, you know, really even something off of like a Step Up soundtrack. It just works well. I mean, it's intended for a dance cut. It works, but it probably could have used like a hook. I mean, I'm glad that this was a single that didn't have T-Pain or Akon on there, because I do feel like Tay Dizm needed to establish himself, and he does a pretty good job. I just feel like the hook is not quite as beautiful as the one on Dream Girl, or really Beam Me Up in some cases, but it's serviceable enough to kind of say it works as a solid club bop. But I think it really probably, if these songs would have been on the album, I think Nothing But the Truth probably would have done the worst out of the three of these. Which is too bad, because he needed to establish himself past T-Pain and especially Akon, but that's just kind of the concept there. Minus like these three singles, there are some other hits on here. Like I feel like I was talking about, T-Pain delivers despite the fact that it feels like he's sleepwalking through these hooks. Freakin' with T-Pain and Gorilla Zoe is great, kind of crunchy, kind of club type song that just kind of works, and just an overall weekend number that is probably just a great album cut, and is an easy kind of the simple free song to kind of bop to and smoke to, flirt to, that type stuff. Trill Town is an R&B flavored song where Tay Dizm delivers. T-Pain just kind of, you know, does well on there. I mean, T-Pain and Tay Dizm have good chemistry, so they just go hand in hand, and it kind of works for both of them. But this is a good R&B type song, Trill Town. My Shoes is another solid song. This is kind of more of an outside kind of song. Kind of reminds me of like going to like a football game or something like that. It's kind of out and about, kind of kicking back and just seeing stuff, and like it's kind of a braggadocious song, but I like Tay Dizm's approach from it. I mean, really, T-Pain, like I said, T-Pain and Tay Dizm have such good chemistry that it works, but it's just an easy, like the vocoder is not on here, but it's just so syrupy just how well it works, and it's just kind of like an outdoor kind of song, like I said. Like some of these other ones, I feel like he does have some solid songs for the ladies, like He Did You Wrong, and Somebody Like Me, and Long Distance Lover, which all kind of have like various kind of attempts. I feel like Long Distance Lover has a real kind of spacey and kind of smooth kind of R&B kind of club sounding beat. A lot of kind of festive and social kind of moments in Long Distance Lover. And Somebody Like Me kind of reminds me of a song that Jay Sean would do, if you know that song Down. It's really similar to that. It's similar to Pitbull and Flo Rida and like folks like that, Jay Sean, some of those type folks that were doing those type records, club type records around 2009, 2010. What else was I trying to say? He Did You Wrong is a pretty solid song. It's kind of a more intricate and developed song for women who've been treated badly. He does this a couple of times, but I felt like He Did You Wrong is the best rendition of it. I didn't quite enjoy it as much on Love You the Right Way, And there was another song where he tried to do it like Real Lovin', but I do feel like he did it quite well on He Did You Wrong. So that's some good moments that he kind of adds to the apex of just different variations and that type of stuff. As far as, I mean, this project is chock full of songs for ladies, so there's something you're bound to find for the web of, emotions that you go through and such. It just works well. And like, I feel like Money in the Bank had a really good rock beat on there. It kind of was surprising that that was kind of like a rock based outgoing song that kind of had kind of like futuristic type stuff and kind of nightclub kind of outings kind of in there towards the end of the verses when you hear them. So that's pretty good. And I'm just trying to think of a few other ones like yeah, I think I described them all. I think really that virtually takes care of it. I mean, this album is just chock full. But to talk about some of the moments that I didn't enjoy, like I feel like songs like "Do It for My Hood" and "Y'all Niggas" and Mardi Gras kind of had some really clumsy beats, and they just sounded too mixtape-ish, where they had too many horns and messiness about them that kind of went on a little bit too much. And there's a few other ones like Mama was kind of, I felt like, sometimes rappers will have songs for their mothers and stuff, but it kind of feels like on a mixtape maybe that shouldn't have been. I mean, really, it slows thing. It's just kind of a differential song. If that's up your alley, kind of a dedicated mother song, then that's there. But it just wasn't kind of. I I didn't see myself listening to it, and yeah, so those are just a few of the ones that kind of didn't really click with me and that type of stuff. But I really do feel like you've got some good moments, especially just the fact that Tay Dizm easily kind of has like some personality, has great chemistry with T-Pain and Akon, and can make some really nice festive kind of 2000s club bops and nightclub bops and dance floor bops and that type of stuff. There's a lot of moments to dance, groove, drink, flirt, drive, and kind of have a great time to, just within the sense. I mean, it's not from the 2010s, but if you're looking for something from the 2000s, but maybe like all the 50 Cent and like Lil Wayne type songs and all like the 2000s club songs, I think that this is really like a nice breath of fresh air and a nice surprise that kind of showcases some extra 2000s era type stuff, just for that extra kind of vibe of like the stuff that T-Pain and Akon were doing so easily. And it's just an extra shot in the arm, just because T-Pain is Tay Dizm is basically the sidekick to T-Pain and does it well. I mean, T-Pain comes through. Like I said, they both have good chemistry, and they just deliver like some easy kind of refreshing kind of moments in terms of 2000s oriented type stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you like the 10 songs I recommend out of 19. There's actually 25 songs on this mixtape if you download it, but there's 4 skits plus a clean version cut of Dreamgirl with Akon, and then a second mixtape version of like Dreamgirl also. So Dreamgirl is on here 3 times. So subtracting those 6 songs, there's actually 19. So I'm going to list the 10 songs out of 19 I recommend to you. So Freakin', Dreamgirl, Beam Me Up, Money in the Bank, Trill Town, My Shoes, Nothing But the Truth, He Did You Wrong, Long Distance Lover, and Somebody Like Me. I mean, the fact that these are free, there's really no excuse to kind of not mess with these. I feel like, obviously it's kind of interesting to kind of get some of these moments and kind of go along with it, just for an extra taste of like the Akon and T-Pain type vibes, and the fact of that kind of music, and this overall a really good kind of execution of like 2000 social vibes, if like the 2010s and especially like the 2020s music is just not quite clicking enough for you. It's just good to kind of realize that there's some good stuff around, and I just feel like this is kind of an underappreciated and kind of underrated project, just because Tay Dizm, it feels like he gets like attention by the palate. It seems like unless you're talking about T-Pain, you would really never talk about Tay Dizm. So, but yeah, me liking 10 out of 19, I'm gonna go ahead and give this album or this mixtape a 6.5 out of 10. I just feel like the execution behind it was pretty well put together, and the fact that this is free you need to mess with this just for a sense of like old kind of T-Pain type vibes and 2000s kind of 2000s kind of like rhythm and that type stuff. But just to kind of say, so the social score, I will give a 7 out of 10, 7.5. Actually, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 just because I feel like these are great songs, but I would have liked like the album quality. I mean, the thing about this mixtape is it's a mixtape from back in the day where you hear the horns and the DJ ski blah 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 type stuff that kind of goes along with it, all the extra kind of noises that mixtapes have. But if this would have been an album quality mixtape, I would have said that these 3 singles are excellent, which they are. But I just kind of wonder about. I mean, it's just the fact that it's free that's how you get it, but it's good. But it's just unfortunate. Another thing I would have to say is it's unfortunate that this album never materialized. This is good stuff from Tay Dizm, and for what it is, it's pretty solid. But um, yeah, I kind of look after it and I'm like, damn, it kind of left me hungry for more in that sense, in kind of a more official sense, and trying to see what would have happened. Plus, I would have wanted vocoder, T-Pain on there, and that type stuff. So there's a number of things to really sit there and mention as far as what needed to be on this. But for the most part, there's not an overabundance to really complain about. I mean, I feel like minus like a handful of weak cuts, this really has a good amount of songs for the ladies and just an overall good vibes and good execution of what it was trying to do. So in terms of the future, like Tay Dizm, I think is no longer affiliated with T-Pain. They haven't really messed around. They haven't really messed. They haven't really collaborated since like 2008, 2009. So it seems like he's not affiliated with Nappy Boy or T-Pain anymore. But I just would kind of have to say, like, he dropped a few mixtapes. I don't really know. Wikipedia doesn't really keep tabs on him that much, but I just would have to say, like, still, he has some projects. I could see myself returning to him, but this is basically like his most popular project, so just understand that.